Hello everyone, welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. My name is James Herrick and today I am doing a film study on UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. Before we get started, make sure you go and follow Vendetta Sports Media on all other social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok, so make sure you go and follow all of those. Now, for this film study, I am not here to tell you that Israel Adesanya, kicks the leg good, or that Israel Adesanya is a great striker, because you probably already know those things. Today, I am here to take a deeper look at some of the small things that Israel Adesanya does well that makes him a UFC champion. I'm going to do that by giving you a couple of strengths, a couple of weaknesses, and at the end of that, I'm going to tell you what Israel Adesanya needs to do to win his fights and what his opponents can do that could possibly result in them defeating Israel. The first strength that we are going to look at for Israel Adesanya is his feints. If you don't know what a feint is a slight fake of a shot or a movement that you can use to draw a reaction from your opponent, and you can also use that to kind of prevent them from throwing their own offense. Now, what makes Israel Adesanya's feints so special? Israel Adesanya is a mastermind at making reads off of his own feints. So to demonstrate this, we are going to look at a sequence in the first round of his second fight with Robert Whittaker to get an idea of how he is so good at throwing his feints. All right, so in this clip, watch the lower body of Adesanya. You see Adesanya really make a good lower body feint, and he draws the reaction from Whittaker. What Whittaker is trying to do here is he's trying to bring that knee up to help protect himself against shots to the body, and more specifically, kicks to the body. Shortly after, we will see this exchange between the two. We see Adesanya move forward and land a left hand right down the pipe. And look at the still shot of this shot landing. It is almost identical to the feint that we saw a couple seconds ago. So essentially, what Adesanya does is he makes this feint. He gets the reaction from Whittaker. He sees, okay, Whittaker is going to bring up this knee. If that knee's up, he can't move side to side, front to back. So he returns a couple seconds later and throws this shot right down the middle. He gets the read from Whittaker and gets the knockdown as a result. Now, the second strength that we are going to look at from Israel Adesanya is his takedown defense. And everyone knows Israel Adesanya has really strong takedown defense, but what impresses me is his attention to detail when defending these takedowns. He does all of the little things right, and he gets rewarded for that. One opponent who really tried to take him down and did so on several different occasions was Marvin Vettori in their rematch. So to help demonstrate what makes Israel Adesanya so good at defending takedowns, let's go look at the film. First things first, we see a really good entry from Vettori here. However, Adesanya does a great job of getting his hips low and really preventing Vettori from making too much progress on his initial takedown attempt. And then we see Vettori work his way up to this position. Now from here, Izzy's really doing two things. Number one, he's fighting those hands to make sure he does not get thrown. And number two, he is trying to control head position to make sure he is not controlled up against the fence. This culminates in Izzy getting to this position. From here, all Izzy has to do is work his way to the right because he is in full control of this position. And as Vettori chases him, he shucks by and gets free. Now, when we're looking to identify weaknesses for Israel Adesanya, it's really not that easy because he is such a great fighter. He is not top 5 in the UFC pound for pound rankings by being a bad fighter with a lot of weaknesses. but there are a couple of small things that may seem like nitpicking, but you don't really have much of a choice when you're looking for weaknesses in a fighter as strong as Israel Adesanya. And the first weakness that I came up with was that sometimes when he's getting up off bottom, he will give his back to his opponent rather easily, and sometimes he makes mistakes in some of those scenarios. And to demonstrate this, I think there's a really good example in his fight with Robert Whittaker. That is the rematch. Again, we're going to look at some more clips from that. And this also occurred against Marvin Vettori. However, I think against Marvin Vettori, Marvin did some good things that resulted in him getting that position. And in this Whittaker fight, and in this example I'm about to show you, it really comes down to Israel Adesanya making some mistakes. So that is the clip that we are going to look at. Okay, so this is pretty simple. Robert Whittaker gets a really good takedown, and as Israel Adesanya is working back to his feet, he gets his back taken almost immediately. Okay, so Israel Adesanya, when he gets taken down, he goes to a standard wrestling get-up. And that is okay. I like a wrestling stand-up. I think it's effective. The problem is that he actually stands up with the wrong leg. In this position, he should be bringing that left leg up off the mat. However, we can see his right leg is the one that leaves the ground. Because Adesanya makes that mistake, it now leaves him to this position when he attempts to escape. He is now unable to create the space that you want in this position, and Robert Whittaker does a really good job of taking advantage and finding the back. Moving on to our second weakness for Israel Adesanya, I don't have any film to show you, but rather these are just some observations that I picked up from watching film. So the very first thing that I noticed was sometimes Israel can get backed up against the cage, and that's when his opponents can really do some better work in the striking department. So I think that is one area that he can improve upon a little bit. The other thing that I would really like from Israel is just simply more activity. He's such a good striker that I would like to see him step on the gas a little bit more frequently. And I know stepping on the gas can come with a risk of getting punched because you're giving your opponent openings to take advantage of. However, I think with Israel, he can fall into a trap sometimes of not striking enough. And the reason that I don't like that is because in a close fight that can go either way, the volume, if another striker comes at him with more volume, that decision could go the opposite way. So I think that is just one thing to be wary of, especially in close fights. He probably would want to throw a little bit more volume. When it comes to creating a game plan for Izzy to go out there and find success in his fights, he really has laid out a pretty good game plan to go be victorious. And that is stay on the outside when needed, land big leg kicks, and really pick your opponent apart from a distance. He did that tremendously against Vettori, where he landed a lot of outside leg kicks, utilized those great feints, and did not really see much damage in return. Especially when Izzy is striking from a distance, he is very hard to hit because he has great head movement. Now, the other major thing that Izzy needs to do is make sure he is not taken down. Going into a fight, that is just one thing that Israel needs to ensure does not happen, because that is one quick and easy way for a fight to swing in his opponent's favor. Coming up with ways to beat Israel Adesanya was not an easy task by any means. Israel Adesanya is obviously a great fighter, and if it was easy to find a way to beat Israel Adesanya, everyone would do it. Now, the biggest thing that I did notice in his one loss against Jan Blachowicz was that Jan was a lot more active in digging to the body and really investing in body shot. By watching the film, I located a couple of things that Jan Blachowicz was doing that specifically gave him a little bit more success than Whittaker and Vettori. Jan was very successful in starting combinations with jabs and then going to the body when Izzy went to slip the jab. He also did a really good job of hitting Izzy with kicks as Izzy was moving backwards. Almost as important, when Jan was throwing combinations, he threw a lot of combinations that included shots to both the head and body. This is a great example here. Lastly, whenever Jan was really struggling with the feints of Adesanya, he would throw a kick to the body to kind of end that streak of feints. Now, hitting Adesanya with body shots really is a great way to turn the fight in your favor, but there are a couple of other small things that can be beneficial if added as well. I think the first thing is if someone is able to take down Adesanya, don't immediately look to control position. Look to strike. That sounds weird because controlling position is always great, but I saw Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori both really look to control position in those fights, and they really didn't get rewarded for it. Jan had a much easier time at controlling position due to his size, but at a little bit better size parity, he is very good at getting up off his back. So I would look to strike and really look to do damage with ground and pound right away and take advantage of those opportunities because there's a good chance he gets up anyways. And the last thing that I would add for a possible way to beat Israel Adesanya is simply outpace him. One of the things that I talked about earlier in some of his weaknesses was that I'd like to see him throw a little bit more and be a little bit more active. So on the flip side of that, if his opponent can go out and simply throw more than Adesanya, as long as you don't tire out doing so, I think that would be a very advantageous thing to do if you are looking to edge Adesanya out on these scorecards. Thank you for watching the first film study on Vendetta Sports Media. I hope you at least learned a couple things about Israel Adesanya and about how he fights. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the Vendetta Sports Media YouTube channel. But most importantly, thank you for watching this film study. Goodbye.